Hello and welcome to this assessment review of the 5001 Organisational Performance and Culture in Practice for CIPD Level 5. Now, this particular unit, we're going to be looking at just a good chunk of questions, but with the change from the old to the new, what CIPD have done is a lot more context. So you've got a lot more background to be able to sort of inform your answers and do some research with now. So let's just dig into it. So this task requires you to answer 12 questions, each relating to the case study. Your answers should respond accurately to the questions and should be informed by wider reading from key academic texts, articles, and relevant publications. References should be included within your answer and full details presented in a bibliography at the end of your assessment. Please ensure that your work is presented clearly, typically using subheadings. What I mean by that is AC 1.1 and then writing underneath AC 1.2, writing underneath AC 1.3, writing underneath, so that they can follow it. And your work, if you exceed the word count by more than 10%, your work will be referred. So word count is critical. References should be included within your answers unless the question specifically states that they're not required, and full details presented in a reference list at the end of your assessment. So, case study. 2 pages of case study. So, get ready, I'll read it. Palmyra House provide respite residential care for adults with care needs, established in 1974 by David and Anne Calmer. Calmer House ethos is centered around high-quality care with a personal touch. David and Anne's daughter, Kristen, took over the business in 2002 when David and Anne retired. Kristen's consultative management style is similar to that of her parents. She values employees' input into management decisions, and employees have qualifications, skills, and experience in their specialist fields of work. Kristen holds regular staff meetings as well as one-to-one check-ins. The purpose of these meetings is to communicate information about the progress of Calmer House against its business goals and to gain views of the employees and the best way to achieve these goals. The nursing staff hold handover meetings at the end of each shift and work well as a team. Employee retention is high. Employees feel strong and engaged and committed to their residents, the co-workers, and Kristen when an employee leaves, co-workers participate in a selection process with behaviours being viewed just as important as qualifications and experience. Onboarding includes details of the history of Calmer House, Kristen telling stories about how her parents founded the company and sold their own home to raise the money needed. Policies and procedures are limited, with informal ad hoc approaches in place. Calmer House is a flat organisational structure with all 42 employees reporting directly to Kirsten. After more than 2 decades of running the care home, Kirsten has now decided she would like to pursue her own rather than her parents' interests. In addition, Kirsten is worried about continuing increase in utility and staff costs and feel these may compromise residents' care. Kirsten decided to sell the business and use the money raised to start her own new business, a spa and wellness centre. After great deliberation, Kirsten decided to sell Calmer House to Chaffinch Group, a large care home company. Kirsten feels that Chaffinch Group have resources to invest in much needed refurbishments to residents' rooms and facilities, and will provide her employees with greater job security. I'm not done. The sale goes ahead. Kirsten advises employees that the sale and explains why it's necessary. Employees are shocked and find it hard to believe that the sale will go ahead, as Kirsten has managed the business with passion and Calmer House was the focus of her life. Chaffinch Group's appoints a manager, Kath, who has worked with Chaffinch Group for 5 years. The company starts to refurbish rooms. Chaffinch Group changed the organisational structure to a hierarchical, bureaucratic structure. The workforce reports to Kath. Kath reports to one of 8 area managers, who reports to one of 2 general managers, who reports to an operations director. Kath's management style is autocratic. She gives instructions and expects them to be followed without discussion. When challenged by employees, she responds with, "I know what Chaffinch Groups want, and they want to see a return on their investment." Chaffinch Group introduces the same policies and procedures in Calmer House that are in place throughout the rest of the group, advising employees of these via email. The people team at Chaffinch Group consists of a people manager, a recruitment advisor, an employment relations case advisor, and an administrator. Residents are also becoming disgruntled. Initially, they welcomed the idea of room refurbishments, but found that the rooms now lack individual character and all look the same. Previously, permanent residents could choose the colour schemes, the decor of the rooms, with great care was taken to ensure residents received preferences were actions. As time goes on, employees start to leave and they do not like the new culture. They often replace with agency workers. CAF notifies the agency of the requirements of the roles. The agency workers' qualifications and experience are checked via an agency, and agency worker is offered work. Chaffinch Groups does not undertake further assessments of their suitability. In addition, employee turnover is increasing. Sickness, absence is also on the rise. Existing employees are starting to feel hopeless and are becoming more dissatisfied as they find out that their workloads have increased as they cover business absences. They miss the support of co-workers who have left. They work longer hours, reduce the impact of residents, and feel that their views and opinions are no longer sought or valued, and they no longer know what the business is planning or how the plans will affect them. Overall, employees feel that the change in ownership is not positive and has not been managed well. Chaffinch Group is also unhappy Calmere House is not generating the income anticipated due to long-term residents choosing to move to alternative care home and difficulty in attracting new permanent residents. New respite care residents, Chaffinch Group are wondering why the previously stable workforce now has high employee turnover and why Calmere House has changed from a care home that had a waiting list of potential residents to one of empty rooms. Chaffinch Groups have set a goal to fill 100% of residents' rooms within 6 months. Breathe. Okay, so big background. And then you've got questions. So you have 4,550 words to answer 12 questions. That is 380 words per question. Remember, you can go 10% over, but you cannot go further than 10% over. That is an instantaneous refer on the entire assessment. So it is better if you mess something up to submit, get feedback on what you referred, then just get a refer on the whole assessment and get no feedback because you've broken the word count. Word count's important, 380 words per AC. As I said. Okay, question 1. Evaluate the extent in which a flat, non-hierarchical structure was appropriate under Kirsten's ownership and the extent at which a hierarchical bureaucratic structure is suitable under Chaffinch Group. So you're looking at the benefits of a flat organisational structure, again, as well as the benefits of a hierarchical organisational structure, which Chaffinch Group use. Why is a flat organisational structure good for a small business? Why do you need a hierarchical structure for a larger business? Talk about the benefits, evaluate them. But it's asking why it's appropriate and why it's suitable. It's not saying why it would struggle or anything like that. So make sure that you're thinking about it in a suitability perspective as opposed from a criticality perspective. Question 2, analyse how Chaffinch Group has used a rational approach to strategy formulation to ensure that services provided meet customer needs. So, rational approach to strategy, what is that in compared to individualized approach to strategy? What are they doing? How could they use a rational approach as opposed to just a formulaic approach or anything like that to ensure that they're meeting the needs? What did they do that was really well previously? And what was that approach to strategy and how could they show that? So analyze that, look at what's changed, look at what was good, look at what was bad. The rooms were old when it was Calmere, but the rooms are good now, but it's lost the individual. What could they do using a rational approach to strategy? And make sure that you read about that. References, citations, evidence. Prove it, prove it, prove it. I'll say this all the time, but you've got to prove that your thinking has king. It's not just I think this because I think this. I think this because evidence says this. Make sure that you put that within your answers. Okay, analyze one external factor that is currently having a negative impact on the residential care industry and one external factor that is currently having a positive impact on the residential care industry. So this is your time to research residential care. What is going well? What evidence have we got of things that are going well within residential care at this moment in time? And when you research the things that are going well, you will also find things that are going badly within the residential care industry. Is it waiting lists? Is it connected to the NHS? Is it palliative care? Is it supportive care? Is it what's going good? What's going bad? Evidence, research. So again, when you find out what's going good, evidence, research, reference, citation. When you find out what's going bad, evidence, research, stats. Build it, build your answer. So, and remember the verb is analyze. So it's not just this is what's going well. Why? If you're analyzing it, it's why is it going well? It's not just this is going well. Analyzes the why. One external factor that is having a negative effect. This is the why, this is the how, and this is what's having the negative effect. And this is the evidence that backs it up. One of the biggest mistakes people make with CIPD assessments is they don't address the verb. They just go into explain mode. It's great if the verb's explain, but if the verb is analyze, if the verb is consider, if the verb is compare, if the verb is something different, and you don't answer the verb, you don't pass the question. So analyze is the why. We want to know the why, not just this is what I found. Question 4. Under Kirsten's ownership of Calmare House, there was little investment in technology. Chaffin's Group wants to change this approach and have decided to implement technology to deliver better patient care and employee experience. Assess how technology could be used by Chaffin's Group and how this would impact work at Calmare House. So, how did they inform them of the change of ownership? How did they inform them of the change of policies and procedures? How could they improve that? What evidence can you find for your idea to prove that you're right? What evidence have you got for other methods to prove that your suggestion is even better because the verb is assessed? So think about the question from that perspective. How am I going to prove what I'm thinking and that is better than everything else? And what do I already know? What you already know about Chaffin's Group, what you already know about Calmare House, what you already know about the change in ownership, how do you bundle that together to give you the answer? That's what this question's setting up for you. So to be able to answer this question well, you need to be, again, on top of the case study, you need to be what they've done, and you need to be able to find evidence to prove your thinking is better than potentially other methods as well. Question 5, using theories, multiple, and models, examine organisational and human behaviour and explain why problems have arisen following the takeover of Calmare House by Chaffin's Group. So, using theories, change theories, organisational structure theories, change curves, human behaviour theories, use a model. Why has it happened? What problems have arisen? How do you get people through it? How do you solve those problems? That's what it wants you to do with this question. So if you use like a Kubler-Ross change curve as an example, which is a theory, some people go through a denial, rejection, acceptance comes later. So maybe that it's just a bad performance for a period of time, bargaining, and then acceptance comes. Are they just in a different point of the change curve? How do you accelerate that change curve? How do you accelerate people being able to accept new ownership? How do you accelerate people being happy? Because currently, obviously, they're not getting new residents and that you've got high staff. So how do you solve that problem? That's what this question wants you to think. Question 6, assess how changes to the selection and employee voice have impacted the organisational culture and behaviours at Chaffin's Group. Remember, Kirsten used to have meetings with everyone, telling them everything that's going on about the organisation. Kath just says, do what I say, not, and all the business is the business. How does that impact organisational culture? What research can you find out about impact on organisational culture and behaviour? Knowing that your bosses are all the way over here and you used to have access to them right here, how does that change your perspective about how important your job is? How does it disconnect you from an organisation and the performance and the service that you're delivering? If everyone's just in a generic white room and there's no personalisation, how do you feel like you're offering personalised care? These are the questions that it's wanting you to think about. It's wanting you to think about it from a residential care home and sort of build that sort of organisational cultural and behaviours piece. Assess how changes to selection and employee voice. Again, how do they recruit? They now just recruit agency. They don't do the interviews where you used to talk about culture and fit and people and their personality. How does that impact culture and behaviour? Find evidence to prove different outcomes for different methods. Question 7 we'll do after a short break when we talk about CIPD bite size. So if you're currently studying CIPD level 5 but you're not studying with HRC Online, you will not have access to something which is called CIPD bite size, which is where we do a short video per AC where we break down the question into its component parts, and we also give you some recommended reading and do a bit of a fictitious scenario to try and help you understand the question just from a completely different angle. If you want access to CIPD Backstage, you can get it on our YouTube channel. It is $29.99 a month. It's a subscription membership. You sign up for it for as long as you want. You disconnect it whenever you want. YouTube take most of the money, so it's just our way of giving something a little bit back to the HR community without making all our intellectual property completely free for anyone to just be able to ravage and take away. So if you are struggling with any particular questions or you need some additional support that you're not potentially getting from your centre, you can sign up to CIPD Bite Size and you will get our video per question. So if you're struggling with a particular AC or you need something a little bit extra, this is what's available. It's $29.99 a month. You can sign up for a month, 6 months, 12 months, anything that you want. Basically, it's just our way of putting our content online for you to be able to access whenever you need. Question 7. Explain how Chaffinch Group could have better managed the change from a small managed care home to being part of a large organisation. How do you better manage a transition of change? So take a change model, take the issues that they've currently got. How could they have done it better? Again, references, citations, prove your thinking, prove successful integrations, prove how they could have spent time listening to the employees before they started making all these big management changes, how they could have spoke to the residents to ensure that people don't just ship out to another residential care home. What do people like about the current place before this big bad company comes in? What could the big bad company help them improve but keep that kept it unique and kept the waiting lists long? These are the types of things that you need to consider when answering this particular question. Question 8. Explain the experience of change for employees at Calmare House and examine how this is reflected through the stages of one model. So I talked about the Kubler-Ross change model earlier, which is sort of down and up. There are multiple change models out there. Pick your favorites and then take the scenario and apply a change model to it. So just have a look at some of the change models out there in terms of how people experience change, and then look at the story and think about how the staff currently feel within that change model. And then think about how you could improve it. What things could you do? How could it be better? That's what it's looking for you to do in this particular question. Question 9, assess 2 factors that could impact employee well-being, Calmare House, including why it is important that these factors are addressed. So what two things could they do to address employee well-being? We've got increased sickness, we've got increased staff turnover. How do they improve employee well-being? So you might think, just hypothetically, Pizza Friday, because that's my biggest bugbear, because it's not going to improve anything, apart from if you like pizza. Anyway, so what evidence can you find to prove why Pizza Friday would improve employee well-being at Calmare House? I will tell you now, Pizza Friday will not improve well-being at Calmare House, but I'm just giving you a throwaway example of what people do to go, oh, look, we're going to ask you to work a load of overtime for free. Here's some pizza. So 2 factors. Find what you think could make a difference. Find the evidence to prove why, and then explain why it's important. This is what HR should be, in my view. It should be finding problems within an organisation, researching the right solution through evidence and going, we should do this, and then implementing it so that everyone gets a step of improvement. That's what CIPD are trying to help you do with this particular question. So I'm a pretty big fan of this one. So think about what you would do to improve this situation with your HR brain. Find some evidence to back up your thinking, and then explain why it's important with stats, data, case studies, anything to just prove your thinking and prove that you've researched your thinking. You've not just gone, Pizza Friday, we're going to do that. Well, that's not going to help anybody. But think about the elements, think about the improvement. Question 10, discuss how people manager, recruitment advisor, employee relations case advisor could support the retention stage of employee lifecycle. So if you're discussing what things could these people do to support the retention stage? Because they're currently leaking like a ship. Residents leaking like a ship, employees leaking like a ship, people are going on to say, explain what they could do. Again, evidence, prove it with evidence. We're going to say the same thing over again. And remember, 380 words per AC, so discuss things. You don't have to discuss one for each, just these people could do this at this. So a couple of things were really clear, weren't they? In terms of what had such a high staff retention when Kirsten was in charge. What could Chaffinch Group do to learn from that, to improve that organisation, to make the change better, to improve the retention stage of the employee life cycle? Question 11, analyse how people practices could help Chaffinch Group fill 100% of the residence room within 6 months. So, this is, again, commercialised HR. This is what HR should be doing. We should be looking at problems and thinking, how do we help the business solve the problems that they've currently got from a people's perspective? You currently have increased sick, currently have increased staff turnover, which means increased recruitment costs, increased agency costs. And that's a people problem. But 100% of residence rooms within 6 months. So how are we going to do that? What are we going to do via people practices, well-being, personalization, things that people liked previously? What created the waiting lists and what did we remove? And what can we do through well-being initiatives, equality and diversity, staff retention? Does staff retention impact performance of a business? Almost certainly. Because if I'm trying to sell you a pen, we'll use their fictitious pen, which people do in interviews, and I've never sold a pen before, I'm not going to be as good at selling that pen in month 1 as I will be at year 2, because I'll have had 2 years selling a bloody pen. So think about retaining talent, improving talent, investing in training and development of salespeople and promotion people, and what you need to do to increase that. Think about how people that are disengaged and unhappy and their level of performance. Think about increased overtime and exhaustion and burnout. These are all things that could impact patient care, and if you can solve them, will improve patient care, which will help fill residence rooms. Just because something isn't a direct cause and effect doesn't mean that it's not an indirect cause and effect. Unhappy staff lead to unhappy residents. All you've got to do is find evidence to prove that, and it's not difficult to do. And final question 12, discuss how CAF could consult and engage with employees to understand why employee turnover at Calmere House has increased. So, as we know, Kath is very do as I say, not as I do. Listen to me. What could she be doing to consult and engage with employees? What process should she do? How should she approach it? How could she do that in a consultative way? What processes, what evidence have you got to back up your theory on what recommends you're going to be doing? Discuss means more than one. If you're discussing, it's not just going, well, do this, because that's just explaining a process. If you're discussing, you've got this process, and these are your options, and this is the benefits this one could bring, this is the benefits the other one could bring. Remember, you've got options, and you're presenting it with options because you're having a discussion about the benefits and the drawbacks of each approach. And remember, if you're not enrolled with HRC Online, we've always got CIPD Bite Size to help you out, $29.99 a month on our YouTube channel, so you can watch video per AC if you are struggling with this. But if this video is good enough, this one's free anyway. So absolutely best of luck. I'm sure you'll do great with this particular one. Quite like this new approach from CIPD in terms of these units, because I think it just puts you in a mindset of what you want to be doing when you decide to work in HR. You want to find problems, you want to solve problems, you want to help a business improve. And that's kind of what this is really focused at. So absolutely best of luck. I'm sure you'll do great.